The Nintendo 64 is full of classic games, ranging from first-person shooters to platforming collectathons. But Yoshi's Story is different from a normal N64 platformer. Instead of racing the clock while narrowly jumping between platforms, you get to jump on springs while eating lots of fruit. See, Yoshi's Story is a nice, casual game with cute characters and really nice-looking visuals, and that's what I like the most about it. Not every game needs to be deep and complex. Sometimes it's good just to sit down and have a bit of fun. But this game may have been intended, at least at first, to be more complex, with added collectibles and other such changes. So on this episode of Beta64, I'm going to discuss the development of Yoshi's Story. Yoshi's Story was developed by the same team behind the incredibly successful Yoshi's Island for the SNES. In fact, Yoshi's Story was originally entitled Yoshi's Island 64 and used this logo. The game was first revealed at Space World 1996, which showed off its incredible looking 3D pre-rendered graphics and proved that the Nintendo 64 could indeed play 2D games. In August of 1997, Yoshi's Island 64 was changed to the final name Yoshi's Story, and shortly after it was revealed that the game size would be increased from 96 megabits to 128. While the game was released in Japan in December of 1997, it wasn't until March and May of the following year that the game saw its international debut. So why the long wait? Well, it turns out that due to some less than optimal reviews about the game's difficulty after the Japanese release, Nintendo of America demanded that Yoshi's Story be made more challenging. Utilizing the extra time they had, the development team made quite a few changes. These include some graphical improvements such as the addition of white fences and color changes to egg blocks depending on Yoshi's color. Also, a different ending was made for when you finish a stage when collecting only melons, new locations were given to some items, and not only that, there were some new secrets added like coin formations in the form of letters. In addition to all of those changes, the team also included a new save feature that lets you save and continue from the last page you left off at. You may not know this, or at least I didn't, but Yoshi's Story was the first time that Yoshi ever had a real voice. The vocal library was recorded by Kazumi Totaka, who happens to be the one that leaves Totaka's song in almost every game he's composed music for. He also happens to be the voice of not only Yoshi, but also Shy Guy, Professor Egad, Captain Olimar, Birdo, and KK Slider. The voices of Yoshi that were recorded for Yoshi's Story were actually used in pretty much every game Yoshi was in until Super Mario Galaxy 2 in 2010, which was the first time that Yoshi's voice was re-recorded in 10 years. Of course, it's obvious that many different takes were made before this voice became what it is now. You can actually hear an early rendition of it in the Japanese commercial for the game. The early version seems to sound more feminine than what we've grown used to today. Take a listen.
思わず触れてみたくなる任天堂64の世界ヨッシーストーリー
The first round of footage we'll look at is from Space World 1996, where we'll see quite a few differences. First up, here's an early look of what is believed to be World 1 Stage 2 Surprise. Why do we think that? Well, it's because there's a fuzzy wiggler in the footage, and that enemy is only in Stage 1-2 in the final game. Now, that doesn't mean that this couldn't have been a different stage, it's just more likely to be 1-2. Then again, the stage is made of cardboard, and not stitched together like the final Stage 1-2. So either the Wiggler was meant to be in more stages, or Stage 1-2 was meant to be made of cardboard. Also, you can see an early question mark block here, which is rotating in a 3-dimensional way, unlike the final game. What's really interesting is that Yoshi collects a smiley flower here, but there's no smiley flowers in the final game. So apparently the flowers from Yoshi's Island were meant to be in Yoshi's Story at first. Next, this part is of Piranha Grove, which has more detailed backgrounds and more realistic looking platforms. Moving on, this is an early version of the Jungle Hut stage. Once again, the level's background and platforms look much more detailed, and if you move your gaze to the top, you can see an early, unused, smaller Shy Guy. The Cloud Gene boss battle is a bit different too. Most obvious is the fact that the background is completely different, and a smaller change is that when hit, the boss changes to a red color, while in the final game he changes to yellow. Last in this footage is an underground level that is speculated to be an early version of Jungle Puddle. If it is, it looks completely different. In fact, the footage we have of it looks really cool to me. And if you check out some more detailed screenshots, you can really see how incredible this level looks. The biggest thing you'll notice is the fact that there's a big Shy Guy, who was removed from the final game. Now let's watch another bit of footage of Yoshi's Island 64, which at the start of the video has a different logo than what we saw before. First things first, the Yoshis. There were originally brown and purple Yoshi options at the start of the level that were later replaced with pink and white versions. You can even see these brown and purple Yoshis in the final game's intro. You'll also notice that the text says select player in the early footage and select Yoshi in the final game with a different font. One of the levels in this new footage is Shy Guy's ship, but it looks pretty much the same except for a lack of items. Though when Yoshi flutter jumps, his face does have a different expression that's more like the original Yoshi's Island. In the final game, Yoshi just uses a normal expression instead. The stage Blarg's Boiler is the same way, except for Blarg himself. He changed a bit. The early footage of this enemy shows he's a still image that bounces, but the final version has an animation with moving fingers, tongue, and blinking eyes. Despite the little to no changes in the last two stages, Bone Dragon Pit was majorly modified. First off, the stage is a bit different in general, but the big change is the bone dragons, or should I say, the dragons, because they weren't originally just bones, they were real dragons. While they do look completely different, they function the same as the final version. Now it just so happens that the underground stage we saw earlier is in this footage with the addition of giant movable bubbles. There are a couple of screenshots of an early Yoshi story that we of course have to look at. The first one shows page 1 beginning with a different background, and there's also an image of page 3 the summit which has a different looking heart that's not see-through. Alright, let's move away from early footage and screenshots and start our journey into some unused test levels. There are actually 3 of these removed rooms in the final game. The first is a test level for testing how far and high a Yoshi can jump. The sideways numbers indicate how high the platform is, and the normal upright numbers tell the distance away from the next platform. The second unused room is a test for cogwheel platforms, and the last is a level for Cloud Gene that tests every aspect of this boss battle. The final removed thing we'll look at, or in this case, listen to, is an unused music track, which seems to be one that would have played when opening a page in story mode. Take a listen. When the Game Boy Advance was first announced, one way Nintendo showed off their new hardware was with a Game Boy Advance port of Yoshi's Story. Though it was only a tech demo, it was quite impressive. The ROM was eventually leaked, so let's look at every aspect of this demo. First off, it starts with a 3D rotating island, and pressing start starts the game, which is basically a single endless level with a single Yoshi type who happens to be green but with blue shoes. The controls for the demo are as follows. A is jump, holding B is dash, L zooms in on Yoshi, select takes away health, and holding start puts an egg on the side of the screen. And speaking of eggs, though Yoshi has some, he can't throw them. In fact, the amount of eggs Yoshi has is directly proportional to the amount of health he has. So every time you get hurt, you lose an egg. And you also can't use your tongue either. What's strange is that the message blocks don't tell you anything. Instead, it creates a question mark balloon that you can destroy. Enemies in the demo include bullet bills, falling weights, bomb-oms, spike balls, and Shy Guys. And by the way, you remember those removed big Shy Guys? They show up in this demo. In fact, there are so many enemies in this demo that the player was obviously meant to lose fast. And once they do, the Yoshi is taken to a castle just like the N64 version. The demo never left this unfinished state, and sadly we never got to play Yoshi's Story on the Game Boy Advance. So that's the beta of Yoshi's Story. Though this game may have received less than favorable reviews at launch, I think we can all agree that this game was a very important part of our friend Yoshi's development. It was only the second platformer with this dinosaur as the star, and it introduced the world to a new kind of Yoshi. One that was no longer hunched over, but instead received a more human-like character, complete with cute animations and an adorable voice that stuck with us ever since. So this has been Beta64 with the Yoshi Story Beta. Thanks for watching.